Okay, so for today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a bunch of definitions that work in angles. So we're going to look at just certain ways you can define angles. But first, we have to look at what is an angle. And the definition of an angle is the amount of rotation between two rays. In case you forgot, rays are things that stop on one end but go forever in one direction. So if you think of an angle, it's like if I have one ray right here and then another ray right here, this rotation right here, how far it rotates, that's the angle. Also helpful, this point right here is called the vertex. That's going to come up a lot. Now, these other definitions you should probably know already, but we'll go through them. We'll start with the easiest one. We'll start with a right angle because the other two are kind of based on it. Now, a right angle is an angle that is 90 degrees. And, it looks kind of like that. I didn't draw it perfectly, but pretty close. The way you can see if it's a right angle is if it has this box right here. That's how you know for a fact it's 90 degrees. Now, acute angles, they're not cute. There is actually a mathematical definition. I mean, you might think they're cute, but the important thing is they're less than 90 degrees, so between 0 and 90. So like this right here, that's an acute angle. Now, an obtuse angle, obviously, I mean, if you look at it, we have 90 degrees, we have less than 90. I think you can figure out what this one is, even if you hadn't seen this before. This is obviously more than 90. And technically, also less than 180. It's not going to come up very often in geometry, but a 180-degree angle is just a straight line. It's called a straight angle. And anything more than 180 degrees is called a reflex angle. But we won't get into that very often. So an obtuse angle usually looks kind of like this right here. So like, if you think of it, here's your normal 90. If it bends a little further back, that's obtuse. If it comes closer, that's acute. This next section deals with relationships between angles. So, super helpful here. These two angles are complementary, and these two angles are complementary. There's two different pairs of complementary angles. So if you just look at the left, look at the right, and the one thing they both have in common is that they both add up to 90 degrees. That's the definition of complementary angles. And one also, just another note, notice it's a complementary with an E, not with an I. It's not like we're complementing the angles. We're not like, hey, angle, nice job. Complementary with an E, they complement each other, and they add up to 90 degrees. Now, supplementary, if you look at 120 and 60, 120 and 60, there's other examples, 110 and 70, for example. But these, they add up to 180. And one way you can think of remembering this is that 180 is bigger than 90. And, usually kids remember that one of these is 180, one of these is 90. 180 is bigger than 90, and S is further along in the alphabet than C. So that's a trick that might help you. Okay, now we have two very important angle relationships that are going to come up all the time during class. So, with the first one, linear pairs. If you notice, 130 plus 50 is 180, and 120 plus 60 is 180. So, one thing is they're supplementary to each other because they add up to 180. Now, the other thing that's super important is if you look at the word linear, it has line in it. These things form a line, basically. And the angles have to be right next to each other to make a linear pair. So the definition here is that they're supplementary adjacent angles. You'll see the word adjacent a little bit later in the class, but basically adjacent just means next to. And one way you can think of it is they form a line. When you put them together, they make 180 degrees and they make a line. So like right here, here's that line. Sorry, kind of got cut off there. All right, now vertical angles. Vertical angles, they're always formed by intersecting lines. And in this case, A and B, sorry I did it backwards, but A and B are vertical angles. And over on the diagram on the right, the 76 is vertical with Y, and x is vertical with z. So basically, these are non-adjacent. So an angle's not next to each other. Non-adjacent angles formed, sorry, ugly M, but whatever, formed by intersecting lines. And the super important thing with this, they're always equal in measure. So if we look at this diagram here, whatever angle A is, say it's, I don't know, it looks about 50 degrees or so. If angle A is 50 degrees, angle B is also 50 degrees. So let's fill in this diagram on the right. If this 76 is vertical with Y, that means that Y is also 76 degrees. Now, to fill in the other angles right here, these two, which have to be the same because they're vertical to each other, one thing you can look at is if you just focus on this top half right here, 76 and x make a linear pair. And linear pairs, of course, are supplementary, so they add up to 180. So to find x, what you have to do is just subtract 180 minus 76. You get 104. And that's what x is. And guess what? That's also what z is. This next section is not about angles specifically. It's more about something we're going to do in class throughout the year. I'm going to give you questions that are called open middle questions. And everybody starts with the same question. Sometimes it's the same answer, not all the time. But all the time the process, the middle part of it, has different ways you can attack it. So there's a lot of different scenarios that all work out. And I really just want to show you a type of question so that you get kind of familiar with the way they ask these things. So here's an example of an open middle question. It just says, using the digits 0 through 9 at most one time each. That's the hugely important part here. At most one time each. Fill in the blanks to make the statement true. Blank, blank, blank plus blank, blank, blank equals 1,000. So important things to note here. When they just have these blanks consecutive like that, that means it's a 3-digit number. So some 3-digit number plus another 3-digit number equals 1,000. And using the digits 0 through 9 at most one time means that, for example, if you use 1 right here, guess what? You can't use 1 for any of the other blanks. And you can use 0 through 9 the whole time. So I used 1. I know that this thing has to add up to a 0 in this digit. So 1 plus 9 would give me 10. And then I'll pick another random number. I don't know, 3. And then I'm going to go with 6. And then I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to go with 7. And then we'll just test it out. We'll try it out, see if it works. You guys can think up your own strategy to these types of problems. It's totally on you. So 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. 6 plus 3 is 9 plus 1 is, 10. And then you carry the 1. And then you get 7 plus 2 is 9 plus 1 is 10. 1,000. Check. So, as you can imagine, there's tons of different answers to this. This is just one, but notice that the 7 doesn't repeat, the 6 doesn't repeat, the 9 doesn't repeat, 2 doesn't repeat, 3 doesn't repeat, 1 doesn't repeat. None of them repeat. And you don't have to use all of them. Like you notice I didn't use 0, I didn't use 4, and I didn't use 5. So that's kind of the way these questions are asked, and we'll do plenty of them over the year, so you'll get more familiar with them.